My sister took credit for my thesis and got a scholarship, so I leaked the proof to the university and watched her dreams collapse instantly. I'm a 24-year-old guy, and I've spent most of my life living in the shadow of my older sister, Eliza. She's 2 years older, but it always felt like she was a lifetime ahead, gliding through life like it was scripted just for her. She was the golden child, the kind of person who could trip over her own shoelaces and still land a standing ovation. Homecoming queen, debate champion, full ride to her dream school. My parents didn't just love her, they worshipped her. Me? I was the quiet one, the gifted but antisocial kid. I kept to myself, built computers in my room, and got good grades without making a show of it. But no matter what I did, it was never enough. When I won first place in the regional science fair, my dad clapped and said, "That's great! You're following in Eliza's footsteps." When I got into the honor program, Mom replied, "Eliza got into it too." I didn't even get a well done without her name attached. Still, I didn't hate her. Not back then. I actually looked up to her. I thought maybe one day she'd turn around and actually see me, not as the little brother tagging behind, but as someone worth acknowledging. Someone she'd be proud of. That moment never came. Because before I ever got that chance, before I ever got a moment to shine on my own, Eliza took something from me that she had no right to. Something I'd worked for. Something that mattered more to me than anything else ever had. And when it happened, I realized she never saw me as a brother at all, just a stepping stone. During my final year of undergrad, I poured everything I had into my senior thesis. I was majoring in applied linguistics, and my project focused on decoding regional dialect shifts through social media patterns. Sounds niche, I know, but my advisor said it was one of the most innovative papers he'd ever seen from a student. I wasn't the type to brag, but for once I felt proud. Like maybe finally I'd done something original, something that wasn't a recycled version of what Eliza had already done. For months, I lived and breathed that thesis. I built my own scraping tools, sorted thousands of tweets, cross-referenced location tags, and even conducted live interviews to support my findings. While everyone else partied through senior spring, I was up until 3 a.m., running scripts, fixing bugs, citing sources like my life depended on it. Because in a way, it did. That thesis was my golden ticket. There was a highly competitive international scholarship that my advisor had encouraged me to apply for, one that could get me into a top European master's program, fully funded. Only 10 students worldwide got it each year, and I was aiming to be one of them, but I kept it quiet. I didn't even tell my friends the full extent of what I was working on, just my parents. And Eliza. I still trusted her then. One night over dinner, she asked how my little language project was going. I laughed it off and gave her a vague answer, trying not to sound too excited. She nodded, smiled, and said, "I'm sure you'll do great." Looking back now, I still replay that moment, the way her eyes lingered a little too long. The way she tilted her head as if filing something away, and I had no idea what was coming. The email came in on a Tuesday morning. I was walking back from class, earbuds in, when my phone buzzed. The subject line hit me in the chest. "Regret to inform you, Fellowship Selection Committee." I stopped right there on the sidewalk. My hands were actually shaking as I opened it. I read the first line, then again, then a third time. They thanked me for my submission, called it competitive, and then said they had selected other candidates whose work showed greater originality. I blinked hard, thinking I was misreading it. I had originality. That was the whole point. My advisor said so himself. I went straight to his office. He looked just as surprised as I was. "You didn't get it?" he asked, eyes wide. "That makes no sense. You were my top recommendation. Honestly, you were a sure thing." Then he paused, frowned. "Actually, I heard something odd. One of the reviewers mentioned they'd seen a very similar thesis come through from another applicant weeks before yours." I felt like the room had tilted. There was no way. That thesis was mine. I had created it from scratch. I had every version saved. No one else could have replicated it, unless they had access, unless they'd seen my drafts, my conversations, my work. I ran home, heart in my throat. Opened my laptop. Pulled up the recipient list from when I'd proudly emailed the completed draft to my parents. It was right there, CC'd alongside them, ElizaJThorne@gmail.com. And then I saw the worst part. A congratulations post on LinkedIn. Eliza smiling, thanking the exact same scholarship board for believing in her research on dialect evolution in social media. My thesis, my name, stripped away, and my sister smiling in victory. I didn't think. I just reacted. I stormed into her room that night, my laptop still open in my hands. She was sitting on her bed, casually scrolling on her phone, legs tucked under her like nothing was wrong. "You stole my thesis," I said, my voice cracking. "You submitted it as your own. You used my work to get that scholarship." She didn't even blink. Instead, she leaned back against her pillows and raised an eyebrow like I was some dramatic child having a tantrum. "Wow," she said slowly. "You really think that highly of yourself, huh?" "Eliza, I have timestamps." "I have the submission files. You literally have my entire project." She laughed, then stood up and got right in my face. "You seriously want to make a scene over this?" She said, voice low and cold. "You're going to tell people your own sister plagiarized you? You think they'll believe that? Or will they just think you're bitter that you didn't get picked?" I couldn't believe what I was hearing. This was Eliza, my sister. Someone I used to trust. Her eyes were sharp, unrecognizable. "They'll always take my word over yours," she added. "Because I'm not the one who hides in his room all day writing nerd papers no one reads." I backed out of her room, stunned. I turned to my parents. Sat them down. Told them everything, calmly, rationally, with evidence in hand. My mom's response? "Oh, honey, don't be jealous. My dad tried to be diplomatic. Maybe you two just had similar ideas?" he said, not meeting my eyes. "Let's not turn this into a family war." And just like that, my world collapsed. I wasn't just betrayed, I was alone. Something inside me broke after that night. I stopped going to class. I skipped my own graduation. I couldn't even open my laptop without feeling like it was mocking me. Everything I'd worked for, every hour, every sleepless night, every spark of passion felt poisoned. I barely left my room. I didn't eat properly. I stopped answering texts from friends. The world felt distant, like I was watching it through foggy glass. The worst part? No one came to check on me. My parents kept acting like nothing had happened. They threw a little congratulatory dinner for Eliza. Steak, wine, cake with her name on it. I heard them clinking glasses from behind my bedroom door. My name was never mentioned. Even my friends didn't believe me. I tried telling one, Dan, a guy I'd known since freshman year. I was vague, careful. Said a family member borrowed my thesis idea and submitted it. He blinked, then said, "Man, sounds like you're being paranoid." Can people even do that? That crushed me more than he knew. I started doubting myself. What if I was just bitter? What if it wasn't theft and I was just the kind of loser who couldn't take a rejection? Maybe I'd imagined the whole thing. Maybe I was just small and Eliza was inevitable, unstoppable. I didn't feel like a victim. I felt pathetic. There were days I wouldn't speak at all. I'd sit on the floor with the lights off, staring at old drafts I didn't even want to read anymore. There was no fight left in me. But then one night, I opened a folder by accident, just trying to delete old junk. And I saw it, an auto-saved version of my thesis, with a full revision history, and all the rage came flooding back. I hadn't planned to find anything. I was just trying to erase the last year of my life, purge it from my hard drive like scrubbing away a bad dream. But I clicked into the wrong folder and ended up staring at something I hadn't seen in months. Final Thesis V9 Backup. Out of instinct, I opened it. What I saw made my pulse spike. The document was still intact. Not just the final draft, but the entire version history. Every edit, every saved paragraph, all tracked under my name and time-stamped, going back 10 months. It even had footnotes linking to emails I'd sent my advisor, audio clips of interviews I'd conducted, and screenshots of the original code I built to mine data. It was all there. I wasn't crazy. I hadn't imagined any of it. I had proof. And in that moment, the fog that had been choking me for weeks lifted. I scoured through my emails next, found the initial submission to my professor, complete with a file hash. That hash matched the final paper. I had everything. Creation dates, IP metadata, even Zoom recordings where I shared my screen with my advisor to explain my method. And then I remembered something else. Months ago, in a moment of excitement, I'd shared a few voice notes about the project in our family WhatsApp group. Buried between memes and grocery lists was my recorded explanation of the thesis, dated long before Eliza's submission. That's when it clicked. She didn't just get lucky, she planned it. Waited for me to hand feed her the research, then wrapped it in her name, and I had the receipts to destroy her. But I wasn't going to scream or beg. No, I was going to do what I did best. Think and build a plan. I didn't sleep that night. I just sat there staring at my screen, the pieces clicking together in my mind like a puzzle I'd been too broken to solve. But now that I saw it clearly, I couldn't unsee it. And I didn't want an apology. I didn't want Eliza to cry or admit it. I wanted her to feel the collapse while it happened, and know I was the one who pulled the thread. So I started building my case, not for the police, not for my parents, but for the only people who mattered, the scholarship committee. I created a new email account under a fake name. Then I carefully compiled every piece of digital evidence, the draft history with timestamps, screenshots of our family group chat where I discussed my research months before submission, my professor's email feedback, submission dates, the Zoom clip where I presented the findings. I packaged it all into a zip folder labeled Academic Misconduct, Source Evidence, and uploaded it to a cloud drive. Then I wrote the email. Dear Committee, I am writing anonymously out of concern for academic integrity. The attached evidence shows that a recent scholarship recipient, Eliza J. Thorne, submitted work that was not her own. The original author, her sibling, was not credited, and the timeline, metadata, and communications clearly demonstrate prior authorship. Please review this thoroughly. I didn't sign it. I didn't include a sob story. Just the facts. Then I hit send. That was it. No theatrics, no explosion, just silence. But the kind of silence that comes right before the floor caves in, and I didn't have to wait long to hear the crack begin. 3 days passed. Nothing. Eliza went on like everything was perfect. I watched her from across the dinner table, laughing with our parents, tapping away on her phone. She even mentioned a mandatory virtual check-in scheduled with the scholarship board. Said it was just a routine academic audit. I nodded along, pretending I hadn't heard every word through the paper-thin walls of our house. But inside, I was vibrating. The next morning, I heard her upstairs on the call. I couldn't make out everything, just muffled voices, shifting tones, the occasional pause. At one point, she raised her voice. No, that's not possible. I wrote it. Then silence. Long silence. By evening, she hadn't come out of her room, not even for dinner. I walked past her door and heard the sound of pacing. At one point, I caught a low whimper. My parents chalked it up to pre-departure stress. My mom even made chamomile tea, placed it gently outside her door, whispered something like, "You're still our star." It made my stomach turn, because while they coddled her, she was unraveling. And I knew why. I had written that email so cleanly, so precisely, that the board had to investigate. They weren't dumb. They were academics. They lived in the world of citations, metadata, and version control. It wasn't about whether Eliza could explain her side. It was about the fact that she couldn't erase mine. The evidence was a mirror, and she was being forced to look into it. I stayed quiet, ate dinner slowly, smiled politely when my dad asked if I was feeling better these days. And deep down, I knew something had shifted. Not in their eyes. Not yet. But in hers. She knew this time. The script wasn't hers to control. The next day, the house felt wrong. Too quiet. Eliza's door stayed shut. No hairdryer humming, no music blasting from her Bluetooth speaker. Just silence. At breakfast, Mom kept glancing at her phone, frowning, while Dad drummed his fingers against his mug. Nobody said anything, but the tension was heavy enough to choke on. By mid-afternoon, I heard it. Her sobbing. At first muffled, then sharp and jagged like she was tearing herself open, the kind of crying I'd never once heard from her, not even as a kid. I sat at my desk, ear tilted toward the wall, my chest pounding. Every sound from her room was confirmation. The trap had sprung. That evening, the storm broke. Mom barged into my room without knocking, eyes blazing. "What did you do to your sister?" she demanded, her voice cracked with fury. She's devastated. She says someone accused her of plagiarism. Do you know anything about this? I closed my laptop slowly, met her eyes, and said the calmest words I'd ever spoken in my life. Ask her whose thesis it really was. Her face twisted like she didn't understand, or maybe didn't want to. She sputtered something about family, about loyalty, about how these things can ruin lives. Then she slammed the door so hard my books rattled off the shelf. Down the hall, Eliza's crying turned to muffled shouting, phone calls, frantic pacing. My parents hovered between her room and mine, torn, but never once did they ask me how I felt. Never once did they acknowledge what had been stolen. But for the first time, I didn't care. Because the foundation beneath Eliza, the golden child pedestal, the untouchable image, was cracking in real time, and I was finally watching her fall. By the following morning, the house felt like it was holding its breath. Eliza's crying had stopped, replaced by the faint scratch of her phone vibrating every few minutes. My parents whispered in the kitchen, their voices thin and strained. I could feel the panic in the air, like static before a storm. At lunch, Dad finally spoke. Your sister's scholarship has been suspended, he said carefully, as if choosing softer words could soften the blow. Mom added quickly, it's temporary, just until they finish some review. Her eyes were pleading, almost desperate, as if I might help her hold the illusion together. Eliza stayed behind her closed door, but the fragments of conversation I overheard through the walls told the real story. The university's board had blacklisted her application, pending an investigation for academic misconduct. The scholarship, her ticket to the elite program she bragged about for months, was already gone. And if the board confirmed the evidence, she could be barred from reapplying anywhere for years. That night, Dad came to my room. His voice was tight, his eyes red. You've made your point, he said. She's your sister. Do you really want this to define her future? Maybe you could talk to them? Ask them to reconsider? I stared at him. When I told you she stole my work, you told me not to start a family war, I said. But now that her future is on the line, you want me to save her? He looked down. Didn't answer. I closed my door without another word. For the first time in years, I felt something unfamiliar, something heavy but sharp. Power. And I wasn't about to give it back. A week passed, and the house settled into a strange, brittle quiet. Eliza barely emerged from her room. When she did, her eyes were swollen, her voice flat. Our parents still tried to hover, knocking on her door with tea, whispering late at night, but even they had stopped pretending things would blow over. Then my professor called. I almost didn't pick up. I'd ignored so many messages by then. But his voice carried a steadiness I hadn't heard in months. I heard about the scholarship board's investigation, he said. They reached out to me to verify your authorship. He paused, then added, I confirmed everything. They know the work is yours. For a long moment, I couldn't speak. My throat tightened. It was the first time since this nightmare began that someone, anyone, stood firmly on my side. They've asked if you'd like to resubmit your application, he continued. Under your own name this time. I'll personally vouch for you. It felt surreal, like the ground I'd been free-falling through had finally solidified. For the first time, I wasn't just reacting to what Eliza had done, I was reclaiming what she tried to steal. Within days, I filed a fresh application. The committee fast-tracked it, already familiar with my work. 2 weeks later, an email arrived in my inbox. Congratulations, we're thrilled to offer you the International Fellowship. I read it 3 times before it sank in. This time, there was no shadow, no comparison, no stolen glory. Even distant relatives, people I barely spoke to, reached out after hearing the story. Some said they'd always sensed Eliza's need to be the star. Others simply said, "We're proud of you." For once, I believed them, but inside our house, the air stayed heavy. My parents avoided eye contact, and Eliza's silence hardened into something darker, and I knew this story wasn't finished yet. The acceptance email still sat open on my laptop when I decided to write her. Not a rant, not a victory speech, just a single message. You could have built something of your own, but you chose to steal mine. I won't carry that weight for you. I didn't sign it with love. I didn't even sign my name. I hit send and closed the lid. She never replied. 2 weeks later, I boarded a plane for my new university overseas. The city skyline shrank beneath me, the lights scattering like embers as the plane climbed into darkness. For the first time in years, I wasn't looking over my shoulder. The weight of her betrayal had been heavy enough to crush me, but somehow it had also forged something harder, something unshakable. I haven't spoken to my parents since. They still send occasional emails, short, awkward check-ins, but I keep them unread. Maybe one day I'll open them, maybe not. I'm not ready to decide. People think revenge is about gloating, about rubbing someone's face in the wreckage. But that's not what this was. Watching her dreams collapse wasn't about triumph. It was about balance. She taught me that trust can be a weapon, that silence can be a blade, that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is step out of the shadow and never step back. As the plane pierced the clouds, I finally exhaled. Her world was built on a lie, mine was just beginning, and I wasn't going back.